Well, something equally sinister is now emerging, which is starting to be reporting in the mainstream press. And let's return to yesterday's news, where it was reported that GCHQ was being given additional powers by Prime Minister David Cameron to spy on members of the public and private firms. And David Cameron was so enamoured with the need for further spying by the state that he had given special permission for camera crews to go inside GCHQ. What was he saying? Well, this is what he was saying. The visit to the HQ was granted by David Cameron, who's pushing to give agencies like GCHQ access to encrypted communications. But he's also warned internet firms they must work with security agencies to stop their networks becoming a safe haven for terrorists. Now, we are recovering this news because we're going to add to it today, but also, of course, to say that this is unbelievably dangerous, that we have a government, a conservative government under David Cameron, which has been destroying its own Conservative Party records relating to pre-election promises. Those have all been wiped off their website, hidden from the public. We've got a government that has been destroying records about child abuse, but that same government now wants to give even greater powers to GCHQ to spy upon us. Now, we reported, and this was accurate reporting, that within GCHQ's massive staff of over 5,000 people, there were increasing teams of young employees. These are young people, mid-late 20s. Their colleagues regard them as fanatical in the way they approach their work. And it's been indicated to the UK column that some of these youngsters seem to regard what they do as one giant computer game. They're losing the ability to reason what is real life and what is just a computer game spying on their fellow human beings. We also reported accurately that the political charity Common Purpose had been training members of the GCHQ staff. How is this possible when, of course, GCHQ is one of the most highly secure intelligence buildings in the country? Every member of staff is vetted for their ability to keep secret. And suddenly we have a political charity which boasts it gets people to act outside their authority, and indeed boasts that it holds secret meetings behind closed doors with its so-called future leaders. How was this political organisation able to recruit and train GCHQ staff for Common Purpose's own political agenda? Where does this take us? Well, it takes us onto Cameron's grab at state control of the press. So let's see how this pans out. David Cameron, of course, is a Common Purpose advocate. He strongly supports Common Purpose's work, and he has particularly assisted them with the setup of Common Purpose in India, Disha project in India. Here we are. And note that that's connected in with Chris Patton, BBC chairman, as was, and also in with Francis Maud of the Cabinet Office. And of course, it was Common Purpose that was going to train the top 200 civil servants. So who else do we need to look at around David Cameron? We'll enter David Bell and Julia Middleton, the two senior people from Common Purpose. And these are the same individuals that created the Media Standards Trust, which of course was to help Brian Leveson run the Leveson inquiry to take control of the press and media in UK. The campaign was hacked off, and if we follow it through, we can also see links through into Edinburgh University and Media Dem, who we've mentioned before. That links us nicely into the European Union, and we've now virtually got a suite of actions which show that David Cameron's Conservative government is working through Common Purpose to take control of our civil servants but of course we've also got direct links through to European Union policy. A few other organisations we can add in here. These are the sort of organisations that don't tend to occur or don't tend to be revealed in the mainstream press, but we're going to say Goldsmith University, the Leverhulme Media Research Centre and the Media Reform Coalition have all been working very hard in the background previously to influence the Leveson inquiry, but their job is to help slide in controls over the British press. So today, what's been reported? Let's bring ourselves back to what David Cameron is up to and a report by the Daily Mail. Here we are. So what has emerged is that British spooks have tapped emails from UK and US media, and they've rated journalists alongside terrorists as potential security threats. Now, this has come out of the leaked Snowden files, but apparently British spooks intercepted emails from US and UK media organisations, and they rated investigative journalists alongside terrorists and hackers as potential security threats. Internal advice circulated by intelligence chiefs at the government spy centre GCHQ apparently claimed journalists and reporters representing all types of news media represent a potential threat to security. Journalists and reporters representing all types of news media represent a potential threat to security. Well, that should be frightening enough for free speech and our liberty. Let's follow it through. These are some of the detailed comments in the article. We've got British security officers scooped up 70,000 emails in just 10 minutes during one interception exercise in 2008. This shows you the sheer power of GCHQ, 70,000 emails collected in 10 minutes. One restricted document, which according to The Guardian was intended for those in army intelligence, warns that journalists and reporters representing all types of news media represent a potential threat to security. So that key statement was apparently sent through to army intelligence. The report also continued, of specific concern are investigative journalists who specialise in defence-related exposés, either for profit or what they deem to be of the public interest. Now, this is a very critical statement, but of course, because of course, in the public interest is the most important thing a journalist can work to, which is bringing the truth to the public so that they can then make the informed decision. Well, they scored journalists. So here we have British intelligence agencies scoring journalists. And just hold the slide, Nick, for a second. I'll just say that if there's any GCHQ people watching the UK Column News programme today, can I welcome you on board and just say that we're fascinated to now see what GCHQ is really doing as opposed to what it claims to do. Where has this led, however? Well, this is the sting, because according to the Mail's article, newspaper editors and lawyers have called for a new freedom of expression law. This is a state grab for control of the press and media, and let's have a look at how it works. Central, Labour and Conservative Lib Dem governments have of course unleashed the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya and Syria and more, creating a terror threat from so-called extremist Islam. Having created the terror threat, this has enabled Labour and Conservative governments to give GCHQ and the intelligence services more power to snoop. GCHQ has moved on to set up financial contracts with NSA in the States so that they can now move across to spying on journalists and the general public. GCHQ have been provably trained by Common Purpose, but of course it's been Common Purpose that's also been stoking up the call for state control of the press via the Media Standards Trust and Leveson. Well, the Edward Snowden documents show the scale of the snooping operation, and what we now have occurring is the mainstream press and media reporting the sheer horror of increased state snooping, and that's led to this snake, the hidden snake. Newspaper editors and lawyers call for new freedom of expression law. Why is that law important? Well, if we think it through, a new freedom of expression law enacted by the use of statute law will give the government immediate demarcation and control over what can and cannot be reported. And the British state will therefore achieve both aims of more state spying on the general public and greater control of the press and media. And well, he's done it, because David Cameron will have moved Britain significantly closer to becoming a communitarian Marxist dictatorship. We'll say to our audience today, if you're watching us live or you're listening live, once we do the investigation on what the British state is doing, it is so easy to pull apart their plans to literally destroy Britain as a nation state. And of course, this is why we now see panic in the government and why the government wants to unleash the British intelligence services on journalists, whether they're mainstream journalists, of course, or whether they are people like ourselves, amateur, but we hope effective. We'll jump back. Let's have a look at how things were set up around the Leveson inquiry. We'll remind ourselves, David Cameron central to all of this, Prime Minister, Privy Councillor, and of course Common Purpose. Nick Clegg, unelected Deputy Prime Minister, made Lord President of the Privy Council, an unelected man with unbelievable power over what happens in the UK. So David Cameron sets up the Leveson inquiry with Brian Leveson QC, just happens to be another Privy Councillor, and of course decisions in the Privy Council are not in the public eye. Chatham House rules, effectively. And what better thing to introduce David Bell, the big man who was not only a senior member on the board with Brian Leveson, but also, of course, working with the Media Standards Trust and Common Purpose. Up at the top, let's bring in this gentleman, Lord Phillips of Worth, chair of the Foundation Group, former president of the Supreme Court, and, oh dear, another Privy Councillor. He appointed Sir Hayden Phillips to be chair of the appointments panel for the Independent Press Standards Organisation. So here we see an old boy network like none setting up the control organisation for the press. And we just say, well, there's one other gentleman here, Paul Andrew Vickers from the Trinity Mirror Group, who also was able to put in information to for Lord Leveson to evaluate in his drive to take control of the press. So it all fits together very nicely, and Mr. Vickers helped create the Ipsos structure and rules. We can also look at it in this direction, because as we move towards the so-called Royal Charter, we've got closed-door meetings in Buckingham Palace. We've got Nick Clegg central to talks in his role as Lord President of the Privy. We've got Lord McNally, the Justice Minister, Jeremy Hunt, Health Secretary, and Maria Miller, the Culture Secretary. So there we are. It's all done in plain sight, but a little analysis by the column shows that we have had a hidden campaign across all three parties, LibLabCon, to take control of the press. Why do you need control of the press and media? Because no dictatorship can possibly survive with a healthy, free press and media. So, UK column has been reporting on a number of subjects. A little while ago, we reported on the use of particular medication for members of the armed forces going south to Sierra Leone on board RFA Argus. And we pointed out here that they had been given the anti-malarial drug Lariam, which had side effects including anxiety, confusion, hallucinations, and mental depression. So under the new situation of GCHQ, we can do this. We are sure that since that's a military report, it's been classified military intelligence, and presumably the UK column has now been classified a low-risk terrorist organisation. We've also reported on big problems with mod contracts, 5.7 billion wasted after a string of operating areas. Well, they're not errors, these are deliberate breakdown of Britain's military procurement system. But of course, this was a military article. So same rule applies, military intelligence, the UK column is a possible low-risk terrorist organisation. How about this? Of course, Russia Today was accurately reporting that UK teachers had been asked to inform police on extremist students, and presumably GCHQ would classify that assisting Russia, a hostile military power, and therefore classifying the UK column a possible low-risk terrorist organisation. We've also reported on the failure of the government to deal with child abuse and paedophiles. And here's Nottingham Mickey Summers, a very brave man who's been fighting to bring abusers to justice. Presumably, the state would classify this as undermining the British government by exposing paedophiles. Or we could go in this direction. This is where we'd reported on the fact that Rotherham had targeted members of UKIP. Of course, UKIP is an approved party. And since we brought up the fact that UKIP had been attacked by the authorities in Rotherham, we would be attacked by GCHQ for undermining the British government by promoting UKIP. And that would mean that the UK column was a possible low-risk terrorist organisation. Here we are reporting on the EU, of course, one of the most corrupt organisations in the world, which has still failed to produce any signed-off audited accounts. We reported on the Mail's comments about Mr. Juncker and what was going on to do with the movement of people in states. We said it was a puppet show where the British Prime Minister was simply a boy being played. We believe that GCHQ would classify this undermining the European Union by reporting, and that would mean that the UK column was a possible low-risk terrorist organisation. We also commented on the fact that David Cameron was reported to have said, I've already done Libya, where shall I invade next? And of course, this is the Prime Minister that boasts a long lineage of blue blood, descended from Moses. We commented on all of this, and we believe that that would result in us being classified by GCHQ as undermining the British government by telling the truth. Clearly a low-risk terrorist organisation. And of course, if we commented on GCHQ and we made comment on their selection and training procedures and the fact that the political charity Common Purpose is now active in one of our most vital security organisations, we think this would certainly be noted by GCHQ, and we think that will be assessed as intelligent analysis of GCHQ, raising the risk of the public knowing the truth. That, of course, is a classic example of a low-risk terrorist organisation. And from GCHQ to North Korea, we pointed out that Kim was saying that only he could have his name, and we spotted similarities with David Cameron. Well, he's descended from Moses, but he's also known as His Excellency within the UN, David our King Cameron. This would probably be classified by GCHQ as undermining the British government by telling the truth through humour. So that would classify the UK column as a possible low-risk terrorist organisation. If anyone thinks I'm joking, let's bring you across to Peter Hitchens, who we reported, and of course was reported in the Mail, as saying this: "We are on the verge of founding Britain's first thought police, using the excuse of terrorism, whose main victim is considered thought. Theresa May's Home Office is making a law which attacks free expression in this country as it has never been attacked before." So we have a very well-respected journalist who is clearly now seeing the intense dangers of a massive state clampdown in Britain. And of course, with the lack of free, open and honest reporting in the press and media comes total loss of liberty. And I think Peter Hitchens was well aware of that, which is why he wrote such a hard-hitting article.